Let me get started. Welcome, everybody. It is an honor to be here. I appreciate that that Brian and Mark and Chris have allowed me to be here. And let me tell you what I want to do in this next time that we have together. And hang on one second here. I'm going to have to somehow or other. Oh, I see. I hit the wrong button. There we go. All right, and that is. Chris, is that fill in the screen?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Great, thank you. So welcome everybody to Magic Comes in Threes. I'm Dave Jenks. I've been in the real estate business over 30 years. I began in upstate New York, was a top agent, then became a director of training for 3 states, and then a regional director, and then Century 21 moved me down to Texas to be the president and CEO of a 7-state division. And I say that because when I moved to Texas, I got there just as this little firm was reinventing itself through its ALC and its owner, Gary Keller. And I watched this little company grow, and I always studied my competition. And I watched in 3 years, they took over the marketplace in Austin. And I investigated it and I saw how they were built. And I said to myself, here I am. I was probably by then an 18-year expert in the real estate business and a leader. And I went, wow, if I were going to design a real estate company, I would design it just like that. Not like Century 21, who I was with, was a very brand driven, very corporate model, not very supportive of the agents inherently. And I just knew the future of the real estate was going to be in a company like the one I saw growing in Austin. So the neat thing is 3 years later, I get a call from Mo Anderson and she says, Dave, Gary and I would like you to join our team. We think you know more about real estate franchising and how to train agents and support them than anyone else in the industry, and we'd like you on our team. So in 1996, I joined Mo and Gary, and we started to build this thing. And there's two lessons in that I want to share with you right now. One is, as I sat down with Gary Keller and we began to build Keller Williams University, Gary asked this wonderful question. He said, what is it that makes top producing agents more effective than others? And we thought about that and we both came to the same conclusion, and that is they are learning based. That is, they take time out of their schedule to go build their knowledge, increase their skills, and get better at what they do. They're real pros in that sense, you know, and then a lot of other people just sort of wing it and try and do it on personality and energy. And so that was number one. So I want to honor those of you who are on this call and paying attention, because you clearly are learning based, and it makes all the difference in the world, I promise you. And the second thing is that to remember that it's not where your future is not determined by where you've been or where you are, but where you want to go, right? So there was Gary, Mo, and I. We only had 3,000 agents in the whole company, only 7 staff members, including the 3 of us. And yet our vision was to become the real estate company of choice, to change the industry and be its leader. And here we are 20 some years later, number 1 in the world by 40%. So when you get the vision right, you can make it happen. And I want to talk about that today. What is it that will empower you to take your real estate game, your practice, to the highest possible level? And I've studied it. I've worked with thousands of real estate agents and written the books, as you know, MREA, MREI, Shift with Gary and Jay. And so I want to share that wisdom. So there's 3 things I want to do. I want to first of all, give you the fundamental cut at what you can do to take your business to the next level and really increase it big next year. Second of all, to make you reconnect with resources that you have there that are just fundamentally wonderful, right? Fundamentally wonderful and successful that you can draw on, that will guide you. A lot of people they know they're around, but they ignore them. And then the final thing is, I really want to talk about the hardest part of this game, the mental resilience. I once had an agent say to me, Dave, you know, the neat thing in real estate is you get a lot of appointments, but you also get a lot of disappointments. And that's true. This is a tough business. Things go wrong. You get a lot of no's before you get yeses. And there's a lot of work you do you don't get paid for, and things fall through. And I only say that is because it's a game that has adversity in it, and you have to have a mental toughness, a resilience to deal with that. And I've mastered that over the years for myself and for others. And we'll talk about that at the third part. So those are the three things, right? How to be successful, the resources you have, and then three, how to build your resilience. So magic comes in threes. Where does that come from? Well, my first mentor in the real estate business was Floyd Wickman. And Floyd began Sweat Hog program. He was out of Michigan, a wonderful trainer. And he said, Dave, magic comes in threes. He said, when you think about things, if you say, what are the three things I got from that book? You'll remember them. What are the three things I got from that seminar? You'll remember them. When you're talking with others, you say, here's three things I want you to remember. If you're giving a speech, say, there's 3 points I want to make today. He said, all of those are memorable. For some reason, our mind remembers in threes. And threes are, they stick. He said, the one thing doesn't. If you say, what's the one thing? I know Gary Keller says the one thing, and that's true about focus. But remember, it's 1, 3, 5. So what are the three things that drive you to the one thing? But he said, it's when you say the one thing, people kind of struggle to figure out what was the one thing that was most important. But they'll remember three. So magic comes in threes. I want to take us through that guidance. So let's kind of just talk about that. So one of the things that Floyd says was all your sales presentations should be powers of three. So he said, for example, he said, what we say to sellers, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, my job is to get you the most money in the least time with a minimum of inconvenience to you. Power comes in threes. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, my job is to get you a home you'll love that's affordable in the right time with a minimum of inconvenience to you. And the listing clinic I teach now teaches this fundamental. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, there's really three reasons to list with me. 1, you can trust me. 2, I will answer all your questions. And 3, I will protect you all the way to closing. See, that's what they want to know. It's not all your certificates and track record and all that stuff and testimonials. It's, can they trust you? Will you take them seriously and get their questions answered? And will you take care of the transaction, what we call fiduciary, all the way to closing? So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, there's 3 reasons to list with me. 1, you can trust me. 2, I will answer all your questions. And 3, I will protect you all the way to closing. There's 3 fundamentals of personal health. We know it: nutrition, exercise, and rest. Not easy to apply in our lives, but we know the answers, right? Eat good, healthy, whole food, not too much, not too many calories, and then get good exercise, maybe 3 or 4 times a week for a half hour. Not arduous, but make sure you're doing that. And then get plenty of rest. Get your 8 hours of sleep. Meditate if you need to. A lot of people shortchange themselves on rest. And when you don't get enough rest, you eat too much and you exercise too little. So fundamentals in personal health: nutrition, exercise, and rest. We know this great American free enterprise democracy or democratic republic we're a part of, abundant, full of opportunity, full of choices, built on the foundation of a commitment to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Individual life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And of course, there's a lot of contention going on around this now, but we know what built this great society: a commitment to those 3 principles. And then in Keller Williams, we're not politically correct. We say our values are clearly God, family, and then business. We're not selling a particular religion or promoting it, as you know, because if you've been to Mo Anderson's inspirational morning at family reunion, you know that she has representatives from 6 or 7 of the world's largest religions open the session with their own unique prayers. So, but it's about finding the meaning in your life. It's about having a relationship with your higher power, your God, your sense of what brings values and guidance and meaning to your life. Your relationship with your God is very, very important. It's a spiritual game we're in. Number 2 is it's family. Those that you love, those that love you, those that are counting on you. We dedicate ourselves to them. And then it's 3rd, and then your business, but business isn't unimportant, because it's our work where we use our God-given talents to serve others, and they pay us, and as Gary Keller says, fund our mission in life. So it's God, family, and then business. And then there's 3 things right now and always you want to protect. I just want to focus this: your energy, your environment, and your relationships. Your energy matters. Take care of your vitality. Take care of your physical energy. Make sure that your mental energy is strong. In these kind of tough times, for example, I read my daily Stoic. It's a feed I get free from a website called The Daily Stoic, STOIC.com. They were great Greek and Roman philosophers who really dealt with the idea of dealing with adversity. They dealt with epidemics and wars and all kinds of difficulties in their societies. And they had a mental set about that, right? For example, their big 4 values are serenity, courage, wisdom, and justice. And I remember that coming out of Alcoholics Anonymous and going to 90 meetings in 90 days. And we would end every meeting with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Boy, if that isn't needed right now, because there's a lot of things calling our energy that we can't change. We can't have it. We can't make a difference in it. And yet we worry about it. We devote mental energy to it. We don't need to. And yet there's things in our own life we can change, and we need to have the courage to do those. So protect your energy. Number 2 is protect your environment. Gary Keller and I, as we built Keller Williams University, the first 6 courses we did were business courses for agents, because we wanted the agents to learn to treat their real estate practice or job as a business. And one of those 6 courses was called Productivity Specific Environment. And the whole fundamental of that is, does your environment support your goals? And if it doesn't, it's going to get in the way. Your environment will impact you. You get to be the architect of your environment. So do you have a workspace where you can be focused? I had one woman tell me 5 months ago, she said, Dave, I had to negotiate 3 days with my husband and my 2 children. We were locked into the house, but I needed to have my own private space where 6 hours a day I could work on my real estate. I could have my laptop open, my headset on, call people, do my command training, do my database filling. I needed that, and I negotiated. And so finally she said, the family understood, and I got my little space. It wasn't very big, but it was closed off, and I had privacy, and I could be focused on my work. And she said, we put a little sign on the door that said, Mom's working to put food on our table, a roof over our heads, and a trip to Disneyland. So have fun with it. But the question for you is, does your environment, are you getting to a workspace, or are you letting the whole shutdown, lockdown, COVID thing get in your way? Because you need to craft out a place where you can be productive in all the things, we're going to talk about it in a second, the 3 things that you spend your time on. And you need a place to do that. And that's why Keller Williams offices are so powerful. We call them market centers, but I call them energy centers, because there's where you go, you plug in, you power up, you vibrate positively with other people, and you go get things done, right? So if you, in any way you can, I don't know what your lockdown situation is, but if you can, make sure you're using that productivity environment for you, but make sure you have one. So protect your environment. And then the final one, and third one in here, is protect your relationships. You want to be in relationship with positive people. That's what makes Keller Williams so strong. We are a company of positive people with positive attitudes, and the Y4C2Ts, and great leaders. And we have a hopeful, can-do, service-oriented attitude, and that permeates the company. And therefore, you can plug into that. So make sure that my wife, Gina, works with women's empowerment, and she says to women, you need to have standards and boundaries. Do not let anyone violate your boundaries. They need to treat you with respect, treat you right, be positive. If people around you are raining on your parade or trying to spread fear in this fear-based culture, then you just turn them off or push them away. You don't need them in your environment. You want people that are courageous and strong and hopeful and optimistic and can do. So make sure you control your relationships. And of course, one relationship is your relationship with the news or the media. I mean, I've turned all of that stuff off. I'm very selective about what I pay attention to. It's mostly factual stuff, all the political stuff, all the fear induction about COVID or all that stuff. I just don't pay attention to it because I can't impact it, and it impacts me. So as Gary Keller says, you know, who your kids hang out with matters. So even though you've raised them well, if they're teenagers and they're hanging out with the wrong people, you know they can influence them. And so Gary said, what about you? Are you hanging out with the right people? So protect your energy, your environment, and your relationships. It really matters. Now, here's a big one. See, how do you spend your time in this game of real estate? It's a competitive game. It's a hard game. People will say, well, you know, it's not rocket science. They'd say that to Gary and I, and we go, oh, yes, it is. Done at the highest level, real estate is rocket science. It's brain surgery. You have to have a lot of knowledge. You have to master a lot of skills, and you have to have self-discipline to do things that other people don't do. You have to be a rocket scientist. So just understand, this is a tough sport we play, one of the toughest in the world. There's a lot of adversity. There's a lot of things that go wrong. There's a lot of difficulty. There's a lot more things to learn than people realize. And so I want to talk about how we play that game. Now, to me, it's a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. I think for sure at the beginning of your career, but I think almost always, 1/3 of your time is on serving the market that's there. Focus on your currently active sellers and buyers and really focus with them and doing, dollar productive work with them. But 1/3 of your time is on lead generation, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, at least that. And that's about building your relationships and your opportunity to do business. We say in MREA that you really have two businesses. You have the technical service business of real estate transactions, and then you have the whole business of getting the opportunity to do that, which is called lead generation. So really, really spend 1/3 of your time and have it time blocked on lead generation. And by the way, if you want, I'll go tell you later, but on page 79 of Shift, the book Shift, we tell you what to do with those 3 hours, because a lot of people just don't know what do you mean. Do I call people for 3 hours? No, you don't. There's 3 things you do in those 3 hours. And on page 79, you can discover what those are. And we'll guide you to those in a second. And then the final one is, the final one on this one of lead generation is building your database. It's the whole game of building your database. That is the key. Your database is your business. We say that. And that's why Keller Williams has invested so much money and talent in building Command, because now we have the world's best, not just real estate, the world's best CRM that you can do marketing, lead tracking, and social media marketing on, as well as a world-class CRM with all kinds of categories and ways to organize it with the people that you have. But here's the key in database. And I want to pass on something that's not in any of our books, but is from Gary Gentry. And Gary Gentry is the gentleman who closed the first deal ever in the history of Keller Williams back in 1983. And he and his wife, Melody, still run a great team in Austin. He's a wonderful leader. I serve with him on the Profit Share Task Force that's active right now. And he said, Dave, I built my whole business on my database. I really did, but I really learned what you and Gary said. And he said, you said 3 things: capture, connect, and convert. And I do that. But he said, I think most agents miss the first part, the capture. He said, I can learn more about someone in half an hour than anyone I know. I ask great questions. I listen carefully. I probe them a little more. They tell me all kinds of things about, where they came from, who they are, their kids, their pets, all that stuff. And he said, but here's the thing. He said, I walk out of that appointment and maybe 20 minutes later, half of it's gone from my memory. I wouldn't remember it. And he said, at the end of the day, maybe 80% of it is gone. And the next day, I might not even remember their name. So he said, you have to capture that. And here's what I do. After I leave every appointment, I take my smartphone and I hit record. And he said, in 2 or 3 minutes, I download verbally, which he says, I'm very verbal. I don't fill out forms, but I download verbally everything I learned about them. Their names, of course, where they came from, where they work, what schools they went to, their kids' names, what the kids are doing, their pets' names, their recreation, all that stuff. He said, I verbally download that. I put their name at the top of that MP3 file. I send it to my staff, and they put it in my database. So now I've got it captured. Now, he said, here's the magic. When I call that person back on a follow-up, I pull their information up on my screen and it's all there. And I go, hey, how's your boy Jim doing down at Texas A&M? And what about Scotty, your dog? Did you get him taken care of to the vets? And I know you're having a little problem with your boss. Did you get that worked out? And he said, they just know I know them. And we're bonded and I'll be their realtor for life. Why? Because I know them. Now he said, that's the connect. Now he said, here's the convert. It's amazing. He said, after I've called them 2 or 3 times and looked at their database, and of course I updated after every call, he said, then it starts to come into my computer. In other words, all that information starts with the repetition, starts to go in my computer. And now I remember them. Now I will see them in the supermarket or a restaurant, and I'll remember everything about them, or most things, and we'll have great conversations, and I'll be connected with them. He said, that's the magic of the database, but you'd better capture for sure, and then connect and convert. So build your database. And then here's the third one. This is what a lot of people underuse. I think a third of your time should be in learning. We said being learning oriented, but I think it's more than that. It's knowledge and skill building. Oh, there's a wonderful book I love called The Warrior Elite, about the training and life of Navy SEALs by Dick Couch. And in it, he points out that Navy SEALs, even after they pass the 6-week intensive, training program where half of them drop out, after they get their trident, he said, they spend 18 months training for every 6 months in the battlefield, 18 months for every 6. And then you realize that top athletes spend hours and hours and hours practicing their shots, their game, their putting or whatever sport they're in, compared to the point of time that they spend, actually in the game. And somehow in real estate, we just think we can wing it on personality and enthusiasm, and kind of like a surface level knowledge of the business. We are not going to succeed if we do not master this game, and it's a tough game to play. So 1/3 of your time on building your skills and increasing your knowledge. So there's the way to use your time. Now let's take a look at the 3 things that make people successful in a profession. It's their knowledge, skills, and attitude. And Dale Carnegie, where I used to be an instructor, we called it the ASK triangle: attitude, skills, and knowledge. And what are they in real estate? Well, what's the knowledge? Well, we get paid for 3 things: knowledge, contracts, finance, and property evaluation, right? We need to know contracts inside and out. We're in a legal business. We can say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, by the time we get finished with this transaction, there will be 75 or 85 pages of legal documents that I will have reviewed carefully and made sure that they're accurately filled out and no mistakes are made in there that would hurt you, and you can be confident to sign them. Why? Because I'm a master of contracts, right? What a great thing to say to sellers, but you need to become a master of contracts, and it's not easy. This is a legally complicated business. And so any work you spend on mastering the legal side of this business builds your competence. And remember, confidence comes from competence. We can try and affirm ourselves and positive self-talk our way into confidence, but confidence really comes from competence. And we want to get competent first, and getting competent with contracts really adds to your confidence. Number 2 is financing. A lot of top agents say, new agents make the mistake of delegating all the financing to their loan officer. No, they need to, they're going to do the apps and they're going to do the approvals, but you need to know the information. You need to be the guide to your buyers and your sellers as to what works with financing. So financing, we need to become masters of finance. And then the final one, and it may be the most important, is property evaluation. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm not a licensed appraiser, but I know the values of properties, and I know what makes homes more valuable, and I will get you the highest possible price. Why? Because I'm a master of property evaluation. Now that'd be a great thing to say, but you need to become one. We had a wonderful formula in Camp 443. Now we have Ignite, but back when Gary and I were working on new agent training, we developed Camp 443. And he and I did a video introduction to each session of that Camp 443. And we had a daily formula for people. And we said, if you will follow this formula for 2 years, 5 days a week, your success in real estate is guaranteed. And it's called 10-5-15-5. It's a neat little formula. What's it mean? Every day you add 10 new people to your database, wherever you get them from. You call 5 people you know and remind them you're in real estate. When you think of real estate, think of me. That's your cut line. When you think of real estate, think of Dave. And then 15 thank you notes, right? I know a top agent that said their whole career was built on 10 thank you notes a day. So we're saying 15, maybe those 10 and 5 you talk to, or anybody else. And then the final one was preview 5 properties, because you've got to know the marketplace, and it's a discipline. So go out, look at current listings that have come on the market, check them out. Do a CMA on them, see how your CMA compares with their list price. If it's someone in your office, compare your notes with theirs as to why they priced it the way they did. But become a master of property evaluation. So 10-5, 15-5, become a master of property evaluation. So on the knowledge side of the business, whatever time you devote to increasing your knowledge of contracts, finance, and property evaluation is powerful. Now, there's 3 skills that we get paid for. Linda McKissick says the number one most important one is learning how to ask for business and not be attached to the answer. Listen to that. You must ask for business, learn how to ask for business and not be attached to the answer. See, Linda McKissick went from failing out of real estate in 1991 to 7th level in 1999, 8 years later. I want to describe this to you. She's failing out of real estate. She's ready to leave, but she's been in it 4 years. She's only doing about 10, 15,000 a year in commissions. And 8 years later in 99, here's what her life looks like. The McKissick Group in Denton, Texas, average sale price about $85,000, $90,000, no big deal, right? She did 352 transactions. The McKissick Group, our systems are your solution. That's their cut line, their motto. 352 closed sales. She has 4 admins, 5 buyer specialists, 2 listing specialists, and a manager. She has somebody running it for her. She's not even running it. That's why we call it 7th level. She's got someone in every position. She's the owner making $400,000 a year for just, putting in 4 or 5 hours a week. Now, I say that because she said, what unlocked my career, Dave, was I learned I could go ask for business. And if I asked for business, I would get business. But I needed to go ask. Now, she said, what I learned was that when you ask for business, you get a lot of no's and you get some yeses. So your goal is to get yeses, and the only way to get to yeses is through the no's. So you don't take the no's personally, they're just on the path to yeses. The key is that you ask. She said, I was thinking that she says, I'm a great sports fan. And she said, I was thinking of a Major League Baseball player. If a Major League Baseball player goes to bat 10 times and makes 7 outs, what are they? An all-star, a multimillionaire, maybe Hall of Fame. Why? They're a 300 hitter. But they made 7 outs. And then she said, I realized there are some sports in which there's a lot more failure than there is success, but the success pays big. And real estate is one of those. She said, I might call 100 people in a week, and ultimately I get to talk to 30. And then I get an appointment with 5 or 8 of them, and then I take 2 or 3 listings. So if you really take a look at all my work, trying to make 100 calls and getting 2 or 3 listings, it sounds like a lot of failure. But she said, getting 2 or 3 listings every week made my career. It launched it. And of course it would. And so she said, and that only took me 10 hours. So 10 hours of making those 100 calls. But she said, it really got me what I wanted. So I knew I needed to learn how to ask for business and not be attached to the answer, because I'm going to get yeses and nos. Now, the other half of that is, she said, later in my career, I learned how to attract business, how to put out advertising and promotions, just listed, just sold, newsletters, billboards that attracted business to me. And of course, that is contained in Chapter 4 of the book Shift. In there, we talk about how to make offers that generate leads to you, right? And that's all there. There's a skill to it. There's a skill to doing offer response marketing, and it's there. And of course, if you're going to take your business big, you move from prospecting to marketing, and that's exactly what Linda did. So number 1 is you have to learn how to ask for and attract business. Number 2 is you have to learn how to make effective sales presentations. I mean, I was in a big meeting with Mike Ferry, one of my second mentor in the business. And, he teach hard-nosed prospecting scripts and dialogues. Many of you may have learned from Mike. And I was at this big meeting in Phoenix, and there were like over 2,000 people in the meeting. And Mike got up in front of everyone and he said, okay, we get paid for 3 skills: prospecting, presenting, and closing. Which of those 3 skills is the most important? How many think it's prospecting? Well, I mean, every hand in the place went up. It's Mike, right? And he went, no. He said, how many think it's closing? You got to stay in there and answer their questions and hang tough and get them to sign. Maybe half the hands went up, and he went, no, it's presenting. He said, because until you have mastered your sales presentation, you won't prospect. You won't know your value proposition. You won't know how to articulate it. You won't know how to overcome objections. You won't have the confidence. Until you have the competence to make an effective sales presentation, you won't. You will not prospect. You won't market yourself. And I thought that was so powerful. He said, of course, if you have a bad sales presentation or listing presentation, you're not going to get the listings most of the time either. So there's the core right there, to spend energy at really mastering your sales presentation. I'm going to guide you later as to a place you can go to do that, in addition to the seminar that I do, the Zoominar I do called Why List With Me, where we really work on a listing presentation. And then the final thing is, the final skill of the three is we learn to do win-win negotiating, which is really using the Keller Williams Y4C2Ts with other people. It's win-win or no deal. The customer always comes first. Together, everyone achieves more, right? And it, seek first to understand. All those great wisdoms are part of the key of negotiating. So there's the three skills. And then finally, there's three attitudes. And these are the fundamental attitudes of high achievers: intention, optimism, and persistence, right? We are people of intention. We make things happen. What we see is what we get. What we set out to do, we accomplish. That's a whole set of skills, by the way, in and of itself. And here's what it means. It means we know what we want. We're clear. We have a vision for how we want things to turn out. We know what we want. We know how we're going to do it. We know what it's going to take to get there, right? And we know why we want to do it. We have a motivation. Our motivation is high. And then, as Gary Keller says, if it doesn't hit your calendar, it's not important to you. So we know when we want to do it, right? So we know what we want. We know why we want it. We know how we're going to get it, and we know when we're going to do it. That's all the 135, the 411, the business planning clinic. We really are good at planning. But then Gary Keller says 80% of success is accountability. So we build accountability in our life. If it's to be, it's up to me. And then I will do more if I allow someone to hold me accountable, right? And accountability is so powerful. Gary Keller said, I built this whole company on accountability coaching. He said, I got the consultants. He said, my advice is this: get the best consultants there are, pay them what they charge, and do what they say. And I remember this because Gary had started the franchise system, and it was losing money, and had been losing money for 5 years, and had a lot of things that weren't working very well. And Bain Henyon, Gary's consultant, said, Gary, you're brilliant and you're a great entrepreneur, but you need some muscle on your team. You need someone that can get this stuff implemented. You need leverage. You'd better get it. And I know you're losing money, but you still got to invest in this. And so Gary did. He hired Mo Anderson, and then Mo hired me. And now the three of us had the muscle to go make this happen, to go get it done, and to really take it big, right? So it's important. It's important to understand that you have accountability built in, right? And that you're doing regular accountability sessions. Remember, accountability sessions are very fast. They're meant to keep you on track, right? They should only go about 10 minutes long. You typically stand up, right? And you ask 5 questions. You say, what were you trying to do? That's what your coach says to you. What were you trying to do? How did you do? In other words, what's your end result? And then how do you feel about that? Because we're in an emotional business. And if we feel bad, we'll make corrections. And if we feel good, we'll do more of it. And then what are you going to do now? See, what's your commitment to the next time period before we meet again? And the 5th one is, and what could go wrong? In other words, what could get in the way? What could go wrong? And those 5 questions. And as Gary Keller says, if you go more than 10 minutes on an accountability session, you're into therapy. Now you're explaining why you didn't do it, and you've got a bunch of excuses and troubles that you're dealing with, or you're into training. I didn't know how to do it. So there's nothing wrong with therapy or training. It's just that's not accountability. Keep your accountability sessions on track. So number 1 is being a person of intention. Number 2 is optimism. I want you to write down the name Martin Seligman, Dr. Martin Seligman, Seligman. He stood up in front of the American Psychological Association as its president in 1998. And he said, we have spent decades studying mental disorder and mental disease. And now it's time for us to really focus on mental health and mental performance. And he founded what's called positive psychology. So it comes out of cognitive psychology, goes into positive psychology, goes into some things now like the happiness advantage, which is a wonderful book out now by Sean Achor, A-C-H-O-R, called The Happiness Advantage. And it says all the research shows that it isn't success that leads to happiness, it's happiness that leads to success. So your biggest challenge in life is staying happy and being happy, because that will power up your success and, of course, higher levels of what Martin Seligman calls authentic happiness. But become an optimist, and that's what Dr. Martin Seligman learned. His first book was called Helplessness, How People Become Victims, and his second book was Learned Optimism, How People Become Optimists. Optimists are not Pollyannas. They don't think everything is just automatically going to work out, but what they do believe is they can make a difference, right? They are growth oriented. They know they can expand their knowledge, improve their skills, and get better outcomes. That's what makes them an optimist. So become an optimist. And then 3 is persistence. We're going to talk more about this later, but that's the ability to hang tough, to be resilient. I once had an agent say to me, I want to be the calmest person in the transaction. I went, wow, what a great place to be calm in the chaos, to be the one who really keeps their eye on the ball and doesn't get knocked off by short-term failures. And if they get knocked down, they get back up. You know, it's that resilience factor. So how do we become more persistent? I'm going to talk more about that later. So there are the 3 attitudes. So we have knowledge, skill, and attitudes. Now, what makes Keller Williams so powerful? We have a triple. First of all, we know who we are, MVVBP. Second of all, we have a set of unbeatable models that we've implemented over the last 25 years that are just, and every one of those models we've taken to the highest level. And I taught this many years in a franchise systems orientation, and I teach it when I have regional meetings. And sometime, maybe at one of your sales meetings, I can run through those 7 foundational models if you're interested. But the point is that there are 7 things that make a real estate company powerful. And we are at the high end of all 7 of those things compared to any other company. Now, we know who we are, our MVVBP, right? Mission, vision, values, beliefs, and perspective. Mission. We know why we're here, to build careers worth having, businesses worth owning, and lives worth living. There's our power 3 right there. And our vision is to become the real estate company of choice for the best agents, the best owners, and the best clients. And we have our values, God, family, and then business. And then we have our belief system, the Y4C2Ts. That was 9 principles, and now we've added a 10th one, the E, the TES, now equity, opportunities for all, powerful addition to that Y4C2Ts. And then perspective, we know who we are. We know that we think like a top producer, meaning we know that we don't get paid till we get the job done, no matter where we are. We have the courage like a top producer to put it on the line every day and not get paid till we get it done. And we know that we're a training and consulting company, right? We used to say we're a training and consulting company cleverly disguised as a real estate franchise system. Now we say we're a training, consulting, and technology company cleverly disguised as a real estate franchise system. So we know who we are. And then the final thing is we've laid underneath it all the platforms. See, the MLS with co-broking and all of that has been the platform on which we built the credibility of real estate agents and our services. We did that through that platform. And as Gary Keller says, if you own the platform, you own the business. And so now we have built a platform for our agents called Command. That's our technology platform. And then with a target into the consumer. When you own the platform, whether you're eBay or Amazon, when you have the platform, then you own the business. And what we've done is empower our agents by building a platform that's unbeatable, that builds customer relations and empowers their business. So that's what makes Keller Williams like unstoppable. There's no, we're not, being number 1 in the world doesn't make us the best. Being the best has made us number 1 in the world. And it's important to stand up and say that, right? So we used to teach people when early on in the early days, someone would say, well, I'd like to list with you, Dave. I've heard a lot about you, but who's this company you're with, this Keller something? Oh yeah, Keller Williams. Let me tell you about Keller Williams. Keller Williams is the newest, most innovative, fastest growing real estate company in America and right here in California. And they go, really? I didn't know that. Yeah, that's why I'm with them, right? Now it's a little different thing now that we're the industry leader by far and away, 40% larger than anyone else. And we say, so Mr. and Mrs. Seller, yeah, let me tell you a little bit about Keller Williams. Keller Williams is the largest, most innovative and highly respected real estate company in the world. And then here's another triple. This is a good one. And it gives you extra credibility in their eyes. And I'm with Keller Williams because at Keller Williams, I'm a partner in the business. I get to share in the profits. I have a say in all the decisions. And more important than that, I am empowered to do whatever it takes to best serve you. See, that's in Keller Williams, agents are treated as partners. I mean, we're not technically partners, but they get to share in the profits through profit share. They get to have a say in the company, all levels through the ALCs, the Agent Leadership Councils. And within ethics and law, our agents are free. They don't have to check with management to do whatever they think is right for their clients. So you say, I'm with Keller Williams because at Keller Williams, I'm a partner in the business. I get to share in the profits. I have a say in all the decisions. And more important than that, I'm empowered to do whatever it takes to best serve you. Yeah, powerful. Now, I want to shift gears a little and go and really help us understand the power that there's a dashboard you should have for your business. And I would recommend that on your desk sits MREA, MREI, and I mean, MREA and Shift next to each other. I'm going to tell you why those would be next to each other on the front of your desk, coil bound so they lay flat. And then off to your right is MREI, so the book on investing in real estate. And so what I want to do, I've prepared a little something for us today. And hang on a sec, and I'm going to go get it right now. And that is, hang on one sec, right here and right here. All right. So what I want to do is see a lot of people, when we wrote MREA, we wrote it for you because we knew that agents are entrepreneurs. And that means they're moving fast. They're action oriented. They get things done. They don't want to sit down and read dense copies. Maybe they'll read something if it's a fiction novel or something, but not in terms of business. So we wanted a book that was scannable, right? Where you could get the whole picture fast. So in MREA, there's a lot of eye candy, open space, headlines, cartoons, graphs, charts, inserted quotes to make it fun to read, it's scannable. And by the way, I'm a scanner. I love to read, but I'm a scanner. When it comes to novels, I'll read them paragraph by paragraph. But when it comes to business or personal development, I'm a scanner. And so let me reference you. If you're a scanner too, and you want to get information fast, let me refer you to two wonderful apps that are available right now. One is called 12min.com. So that's a number 12, 1, 2, and then min.com, 12min.com. And that has taken all of this incredible collection of books and condensed it down into a 12-minute read or a 12-minute audio. You can download the audio and put it in your car, and you can listen to a whole book on your way to an appointment. 12 minutes. Then the other website, and has an app, is called Blinkist.com, Blinkist. And that's 15 minutes. That takes a lot of great books and condenses it to 15 minutes of either read or downloadable audio. They're really great if you want to learn on the run. But let me go back to MREA. So the neat thing about MREA is the first, and I've done on this one page, I've highlighted the key, what I call the magical pages. And the thing is, the table of contents itself is 4 pages long. So you can get the whole picture of everything in the book by scanning those 4 table of contents pages and see where it is there might be something you want to be more deeply engaged in. It's right there on the table of contents. And actually, it's the whole real estate business on 4 pages. And then page 71, the 9 ways an MREA thinks, right? How do they think differently than others? It's great. Page 95, I want to highlight it to you because I said you want to master your listing presentation. There it is, page 95, 1 page. There's a listing presentation. You could make a photocopy of that, go into a seller, and you could read what's on that page, and that would be better than 95% of all the listing presentations they've ever gotten from anybody. So do that. There's one there for buyers also. Page 122 is all 4 models, right? The economic model, the lead generation model, the budget model, and the organization model, all on 1 page. You can just blow that up, put it over your desk, and that becomes your target. And then page 196 to 203, 7 pages on the path to leverage, how to hire, who to hire, what to have them do, all on 7 pages, including our warnings about what to do with buyers specialists and listing specialists. It's just so good. And then page 201, the 5 achievements. So if you want a copy of this, here's what, I have 6 giveaways. If you want a copy of this outline, if you want a copy of the shift outline, and one other thing I'm going to highlight in it, and if you want a copy of my 10 best books for dealing with adversity, and you want all the slides that I'm doing in this Magic Comes in Threes, I'll send all that to you. All you have to do is send me an email, Dave@KW, very easy, Dave, D-A-V-E, @KW.com. Give me 3 ahas, you got to earn it. 3 ahas that you got from this presentation, and I'm not done yet. 3 ahas that you got, and then I will, within a day, I will send you all those items, right? So let me now go to another one that people really don't understand exactly what happened or what shift is. And what I want to make very clear to everyone is that shift is really MREA 2nd edition. We knew we had written a classic with MREA. It's still the best-selling book in the history of real estate and #1 on Amazon.com right now. We knew it was good. And so we thought maybe it would be time after 4 or 5 years to do a revised edition, a 2nd edition. And we went through and said, is there anything we'd change? And we went, no. I mean, a few typos and things, but other than that, but what we said, what did we leave out? Well, we knew what we'd left out. We left out the sales techniques, right? We had put in the business strategies, but not the sales techniques, not what to do, how to do it, what to say. So this book, chapters. Now, by the way, we called it Shift because the market was shifting, but it's really the fundamentals of real estate success are really what's in here. Chapter 4 through 9 and chapter 12. Write that down. Chapter 4 through 9 and chapter 12 of Shift is your guide to real estate success because it's the tactics. Chapter 4 or tactic 4 is finding the motivated, all about lead generation. Chapter 5 is getting to the kitchen table or getting to the table, and that's all about lead conversion. Then there's using the internet, right? And then 7 is getting your sellers to price it right? Pricing ahead of the market. And chapter 8 is getting them to stage it, to beat the competition, how to stage it right. And chapter 9 is how to build, 9 is how to build urgency in your buyers so that they don't want to see another 20 homes. They'll make a decision now on what you've showed them. And then chapter 12 is bulletproofing the transaction, how to keep it all together. So all this stuff is here and I've highlighted and I'll send you this. This is a great, because Shift only has a 1-page table of contents, just the 12 tactics. So we didn't go to the detail in here, but this does. These 2 pages go in to the detail and are highlighted in black, in bold and in yellow, what the key pages are. But one I want to highlight to you is this one at the top. Gary Keller in 2011 wrote a new foreword. I didn't know this until I got a new copy of Shift in just last year. And I was reading a section. I went, I've never read this before. What is it? And then I looked and it said a new foreword by Gary Keller. And the reason I want to highlight it to you is it's only 16 pages long, but it's the best thing I've ever read. The best thing I've ever read on why be a high achiever and what it takes to be a high achiever. And it comes out of a conversation with his teenage son, John. And so it's perfectly written in its language and its approach for young people, for teenagers and young adults. And so if you have anyone in your life that has that would benefit, it's only 16 pages and it's powerful. So I'll send you a digital copy of this. If you write dave@kw.com with your 3 ahas, I'll send you a digital copy of that new forward, which you can then make more copies of and share with people that are important to you, right? So I want to say that the book sits on your desk is MREA, because that's the tactical nature of running your practice like a business, and then Shift, which is the scripts and dialogues and methodology, the tactics of becoming a top producer. So but both of those are there. And I want to make that available to you. All right, let's go back to where we were. And the final thing, I want to shift gears, and in our final 15 or 20 minutes together, I really want to focus on this whole idea of mental strength and resilience. How do we gain confidence and strength in a challenging business and in challenging times like we are? And the market's always shifting. It's going from seller's market to buyer's market, and low inventory to high inventory, and interest rates change and all that stuff. We are in a very cyclical and changing business. So we have to stay on top of the game. So how do we do it? Well, first of all, we have to learn how to deal with fear. Michael Crichton wrote a wonderful book in 2004 called State of Fear. And in it, he said, we have people that want us to be afraid. He said, big government, big business, and big media all want us to be afraid so that we'll vote for them, so that we will buy their product, or we will tune into their news. And everyone just, they overstate things. They go into drama. They talk about all kinds of bad things that are happening. They create fear. And so we have to learn in this day and age how we deal with fear. And of course, there's the classic fight flight, that either I get aggressive like road rage, or I escape it all and ignore it, get depressed, or worse yet, we freeze. The other F, we freeze. We're like deer in the headlights. We're afraid of something, we're locked. And so we say there's really 3 other Fs that you want to replace that with: face, focus, figure it out. In other words, face it, stay calm, stay right there, look fear right in the eyes and say, what am I really afraid of? What really could go wrong? Is that really serious? Is that something I have to really worry about? Is it likely to happen? And then we focus on how could we get by it? How could we get past this? Does it really have to stop us? And then we figure out that path and we take it. We may need help with it, may need to get somebody's support, but we walk through the fear. Susan Jeffers wrote a wonderful book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. So there's something about doing it anyway. And when you get on the other side of fear, we say success lies on the other side of fear. In MREI, we said money lies on the other side of fear. When you get past your fear, you wondered, why was I afraid? There was no reason I needed to be. And the final thing I want to say here that I've learned is that let fear be your compass. Fear should guide you as to what you do, not take you away from it. Why? Well, because other than physical fears like walking near the edge of a cliff or out into busy traffic, emotional fear is really only because you care about the outcome. And if you care about the outcome, then you were meant to do it, right? You're only afraid emotionally because you care about the outcome. You're afraid to call a for sale by owner because you really want them to say yes and get an appointment and list with you, but you're afraid that they're going to say no, hang up on you. And as Linda McKissick said, well, you got to get a bunch of no's to get to yes. But the point is, you're afraid of the no's because you really want yeses. Or you're afraid of being a public speaker or teaching a class because you think that you'll forget your stuff and you'll make a fool of yourself and people will laugh at you and you'll be embarrassed. But the chances of that happening are almost nil, I can promise you. So let me tell you, for me, I took the Dale Carnegie sales course because I wanted to learn how to do selling and marketing. It was instrumental to me. I went back and took it again because repetition matters. And they asked me if I would become an instructor of the Dale Carnegie sales course. And I went, oh, that'd be fun. And so I started memorizing parts of the course that I had to. I co-taught some of the with other licensed certified teachers. And then for me to get certified, I had to go to New York City for 3 weekends in a row and teach a sample class with 3 other instructor candidates. And standing at the back of the room was a retired New York detective by the name of Dominic. And Dominic was the gatekeeper for Keller, or for Dale Carnegie instructors. And he didn't want anyone in to be an instructor who wasn't any good. And I've always been afraid of being judged by authority figures. That's always been a version of mine. So I was uncomfortable about going, and I went into the manager of the Dale Carnegie Institute in Albany and said, you know what, this isn't my real job. I've got a real job. I do this as a hobby. I really don't have time to do this right now. I'll do it some other time, but right now I've got too much on my plate. And he looked at me and said, Dave, I know you're afraid, but I'll pray for you. And I think that's just so unfair when you bring God into the equation, right? So anyway, I decided to go anyway. And those 3 weekends were so uplifting. I learned so much. And, you know, Dominic gave me a big high five at the end of it and said, you're going to be good. And I'm telling you, if I had let fear stop me, I wouldn't be here with you today. I wouldn't be teaching this. I wouldn't be. No, I wouldn't have been with Keller Williams. I wouldn't have helped write those books. I wouldn't have helped build that company. I wouldn't have been a divisional president with Century 21 before that, or a regional director. If I had let that fear stop me then, none of that would have happened. So understand that, face the fear, focus on it, figure it out, work your way past it, because fear can be the compass. Now, one of the neat things that happened, I reconnected with Gary Keller about 2 years ago, beginning of 2019, congratulated him on stepping back in as CEO. And we got together, had a cup of tea, and he invited me to come to regional director meetings. And I've been doing that. I don't have any kind of formal hired position with the company. I don't want that. I'm an independent entrepreneur. I'm an independent entrepreneur. And but he said, go on and teach your stuff. So I started teaching classes, and I was teaching a class called Light My Fire, The Power of Self-Mastery. See, there's 6 personal perspectives that Gary and I built in 1996 and 97. They're called the 6 personal perspectives. You may have gone to that. And they are the 6 ways that high achievers think in order to be high achievers. And the first one is commit to self-mastery. And I think that's a big one. So I started doing this, and then they asked me if I would teach this at family reunions. So this last year in Dallas at family reunion with 3,600 people in the biggest breakout room, packed, I got to teach this. And I want to share with you the fundamental message. See, all of this started when Gary and I were building the 6 personal perspectives. And Gary conveyed an interesting thing to me. He said, Dave, I come from a long line of lethargic people. And he said, that's why I need goals. I need accountability. I need time blocking. Because if I didn't have that, I probably wouldn't get much done. Wow, that's interesting. Gary Keller. Whoa. And then I said, well, you know, Gary, I come from a long line of depressed people. My grandfather spent the last 20 years in a nursing home, basically catatonic. My dad had mood swings and anger management issues. And when I reached 30, I started to have cyclical depression. And I would have these dark down times, and I wouldn't know where they came from. And by the time I turned 40, in fact, I almost committed suicide. I almost walked out into the Adirondack Mountains on a January 3rd of 1983, and my plan was to freeze to death. And had a little conversation with God on the way out, changed my mind, didn't know what I was going to do, but I wasn't going to take my own life. And of course, I'm very glad I didn't. But I had to learn coming out of that, how do you deal with cyclical depression? How do you deal with mood swings? How do you deal with bipolar? And I began to study the scientists and cognitive psychology, and a wonderful book called Feeling Good by Dr. David Burns, where he talks about the 10 ways we talk to ourselves that create anxiety and depression. So clear, because there were 5 of them that I did. I talked myself that way. I was talking myself into my own anxiety and my own depression. And I learned how to talk to myself differently and come out of that. And then I learned, the more I studied positive psychology, I learned how to build resistance and resilience. And now I'm a very enthusiastic, optimistic, positive person, but it was a long battle to get there. And so here are the things that I want to say. Light my fire. It's an acronym. We love acronyms in Keller Williams. FIRE stands for freedom, intention, resilience, and enthusiasm. To me, the 4 areas in which you build your self-mastery. And freedom comes from me, the book, meaning building freedom for yourself, comes from the book by Og Mandino called The Greatest Miracle in the World. And in it, he receives a memo from God. And God says, I've created life to be abundant if you will do 4 things. 1, count your blessings. Well, I'll tell you what, that's one of the big ones I use. Whenever I start feeling down, I start counting my blessings, all the things I'm happy for, including the adversity I'm facing, because probably in there will be a good lesson, right? So count your blessings. Number 2 is affirm your uniqueness. God says, I've created you to be unique. You can do it your way. Don't try and imitate other people. Don't worry about what other people think of you. Do it your way. You affirm your uniqueness. And then the 3rd one was use your God-given power to choose. He said, I've given you free will. Make a choice. Just make a choice and go for it. You don't have to defend the choice. Just make it. Be a decisive person. Know what you want to eat. Know where you want to eat. Know how you want to live your life. Have your own goals. Right? So those 3 things, right? Count your blessings, affirm your uniqueness, and use your God-given power to choose. And the 4th one doesn't belong under freedom. It belongs under resilience. And that is go another mile. In other words, go another mile, hang in. Seth Godin says during this COVID time, just slog in there, just slog along, just keep slogging. One foot in front of the other, just keep moving, right? Go another mile, not an extra mile. That's a hype factor. No, go another mile. I remember coming out of, or when I was in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was trying to get rid of my alcoholism. And we carried this little chip with us that said 1 day at a time. We weren't committing to sobriety for our whole life. We were committing to sobriety 1 day at a time, and then another day, and then another day. And so here I am, 20 years and 10 months later, still sober. So 1 day at a time, right? Just go another mile. So that's freedom. Now, intention, we've already been through, right? So we say, live in gratitude, freedom. Intention, we've already been there. Know what you want, have it written down. Know why you want it, get your motives clear. Know how you're going to do it, what's your action plan. And then know when you're going to do it, have it on your calendar, and then get accountability. So be a person of intention, be on purpose. And then R is resilience. Learn how to be tough, right? Learn how to stay calm. There's a modern psychologists call something, they call it the resilience zone, that a lot of people have a bigger resilience zone. They can take more stress, more pressure, than others. They've learned how to do that, right? They've built that resilience factor. And so I say, build that resilience factor for you. My wife and I teach you a little acronym called MELT, M-E-L-T, melt the stress away, right? The M of that is meditate. Learn how to meditate. I've been practicing meditation for 40 years. I learned it from the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the guy who taught the Beatles. Didn't learn it from him personally, but one of his staff members. But I have my mantra, and I can instantly get relaxed. Under any stressful situation, I can instantly, with that mantra and my experience at meditating, I can get relaxed. Now, my wife, who's a trained hypnotist, actually can take people deeper. She can take them to what's called theta level meditation. So beta level is where the busy monkey mind, day to day where your mind is, that wavelength. And then alpha, the alpha wavelength is where you're relaxed and calm. And then the theta level is deep down in your subconscious where you can reprogram, put in new ideas, and come out with more creativity. It's powerful. And I get a treatment like that from her every 2 weeks because I realize how much it energizes me and my creativity. So that's meditate, learn how to meditate. E, exercise. And that just means in this case, not Peloton workouts and all that. This is just get moving, go for a walk, take a little swim if you want, or climb some stairs, or just shake awake. Anything that gets your juices flowing is good for relieving stress. So meditate, exercise, laugh, right? Go on YouTube and get your favorite comedians and laugh. Nothing better than a belly laugh to release things, and laugh at yourself, have jokes, with yourself about the mistakes you make and the strange things you do and all of that. Laugh, learn how to laugh. And then the T is train. And this is the Gary Keller one. Train yourself to deal with stress. He'll go to family reunion and he'll be at maybe 18, 19, 20 presentations, one after another, different groups. And they all expect Gary Keller to show up and be the man, right? And he is, and he is. And he's trained himself to do that, do it calmly, do it creatively. It's amazing. How many, I mean, think of a professional athlete who's training to do let's say a figure skater for Olympic gold. And they've been training for years and then for months on one routine. And then here they have 5 minutes in front of the judges and the world. For 5 minutes, they need to skate. And if they make one mistake, they're out of the medal race for sure. And yet they've trained themselves to do it by putting themselves in greater and greater stressful situations and staying calm, right? Or I think of like, how many people saw the movie Free Solo with, about Alex Honnold, that young guy who climbed the 3,000 straight up granite face of El Capitan in Yosemite National Park. And he does it without any ropes or any protection, just his hands, his little climbing shoes, and a chalk bag so he can keep his fingers dry. And for 4 hours, he just climbs there, and it's little handholds and footholds. And if he ever misses or slips, he's done. That's the end of things. And they're filming him, and he does it. And when they talked to him, he said, it's because I've practiced. He said, I've prepared. He said, I've been doing that climb for 10 years. I've been working on it with ropes and all other ways. So I knew every handhold, every foothold for the whole climb. He said, so when I did it, it was just like a walk in the park. I was used to it. And he said, I never think about consequences. There's the big one for me. I never think about consequences. I only focus on the moment and what I need to do in this moment. And the consequences don't even matter. I don't even enter my mind. Isn't that interesting? Be focused in the moment, get rid of the consequences. So anyway, melt away your stress, right? Meditate, exercise, laugh, and train, and stay calm and focused. And the final one is the spiritual one, enthusiasm. Enthusiasm comes from entheos, which is the God within, and God has imbued us. However you look at it, we start life with this amazing energy, this curiosity, this drive. We see it in kids. They're so enthusiastic. They're so wanting to learn things. They're wanting to build confidence. They want to ride a bike. They get on, they fall off, they cry a little, they get back on, they try it again. They just have this tenacity and this ongoingness, this energy. And we need to get back into that in our life, reignite that, get back into our inner child in that sense of high curiosity, high desire for competence, willingness to, do the work and fall down on our way to learning that competence and doing it with positive energy and letting that universal God-given force drive us, right? May the force be with you. So there it is. There it is. How to deal with mastery of life, self-mastery. It's fire, freedom, intention, resilience, and enthusiasm. Live in gratitude, be on purpose, stay calm and focused, and may the force be with you. And then finally, there's 3 final things I just want to leave with you to remember. These are fundamental to living a great life. Now, remember, number 1 is life is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Gary and I called it, the third creation. The original creation was, of course, God creating the universe. The second creation was we create ideas in our mind. And the third creation is we make them happen in the universe. And so just remember this, we were created to be creative beings, and that life is a self-fulfilling prophecy. As we see it, so shall it be, right? Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're going to be right. So life is a self-fulfilling prophecy. How we see it, what we go for is how it will turn out. The second thing is, don't be naive. There will be challenges. Life is difficult. M. Scott Peck, in the beginning of his wonderful book, The Road Less Traveled, the very first sentence is, life is difficult. And the second sentence is, and when you face life is difficult, it becomes easier, right? The Buddhists say that life is suffering. There will be challenges. There will be adversity. And you just get to take it on. In fact, my son gave me a perspective on that. When I was coming out of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I had a discussion with him about what I had to do and how I went through it, He said, isn't it interesting? He said, God gives us the bread of adversity and the water of affliction so that we can grow spiritually. Whoa, my own son. Boy, that wisdom has stuck with me. God gives us the bread of adversity and the water of affliction so that we can grow spiritually. Isn't that a big deal? Maybe that's why people say, why is there so much adversity in life? Oh, maybe that's its purpose. That's how we get to grow. So anyway, there will be adversity. Learn how to deal with it. And then just the final thing I'd like to say, I just want to say with you in my greatest optimism that I feel, enjoy this journey. It's a gift. Enjoy this journey no matter what happens. Find joy in it. And just remember, you are the magic. And one final reminder that if you write me, dave@kw.com, and give me your 3 ahas, you got to magic comes in threes. You got to give me 3 not the 3 most important, not that, just any 3 ahas. Then I will send you the full description of what I just did. I will send you the 2 outlines of MREA and Shift. I will send you Gary Keller's new forward to that book. I will send you a list of the 10 best books I've found for dealing with adversity. And I'll send you a printable, expandable copy of that FIRE paradigm on one sheet, all right? Just write dave@kw.com. And now we will open it for any questions and or ahas. You know, Gary Keller and I believe in both questions and ahas. We believe questions, curiosity always leads you to greater wisdom. So if you have a question, ask it. We also believe that ahas are even a more advanced form of learning because that means you go, oh, I got that. I got that. I can go do that or I can use that. So anyway, either one, we'll open it up. Yep. Okay, Carlos, go ahead and unmute yourself.
It's unmute. So I'm curious. What is your mantra?
What is my what?
Mantra for meditation.
Oh, I can't. No, they told me when I did that with that I couldn't give away my mantra. That's it. That's what the Maharishi and his staff said. You cannot share this mantra. This is unique to you. And I don't think mantras matter. I've done a lot of reading in about the relaxation response. And really any sound, or or shrim or jumio or prophet or selling or any word you use that you get repetitiously as you breathe deeply will get you into that meditation, Carlos. So it's not a mantra in the sense of a word in the way that the Maharishi does it. It's just a 2-syllable sound.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Hey, Dave, Morella asked, do you remember your very first deal?
You know, I do, and I'll tell you why, because it was one of those things where I didn't know what I was doing. You know, I realized that through a friend of mine that I got a chance to list this property in Albany. And what I did was I actually asked another agent in the office, in the Century 21 office, if they would help me. And I shared part of the commission with them because at that stage I knew so little that I really needed somebody to do it with me. And so I would highly recommend that for new agents. If they have, because of their relationships or their lead generation abilities or whatever, they get into a listing and they're feeling a little over their head, then I would find another agent in the office and co-list it, or at least have them be an advisor to you and you be willing, I would be willing to share the commission. Some would do it without that, but I would. So yeah, no, I had to have a fast learning curve, but that also was good because I really learned some of the fundamental things that otherwise maybe I would have taken longer to learn if I hadn't had that opportunity.
Chuck, you have your hand up. Do you want to ask your question?
Dave, can you hear me?
I can, Chuck. Yeah.
I want to thank you You know something? I've been in the business a little longer than you.
Oh my God, you're that old? Are you that old? You must have started when you were like really young. You started when you were really, really young, I know.
Just a wee lass. Mike Ferry was one of my top trainers. I followed him. I went to his workshops, everything. And he did that prospect presentation closing.
Yes.
And I remember being in a small enclave of like 300 agents here in San Jose. And he was always prospect.
Yep,
I was knocking doors and cold calling and doing everything. Then one day he flipped on us and he said, presentation. You went to the 3 prospect presentation closing. And I raised my hand. I said, and he calls on me. I said, but Mike, prospecting is what you've been telling us. And he says, Chuck, come on up. And I get up on stage and talk about having fear and trepidation. And he goes, okay, you're right. You have to prospect in order to get to the appointment and do the presentation. You just knocked on my door. I want to sell my house. Now tell me why I should list my home with you. And it's just like, bam. I mean, I had to right there on the spot. So it's so refreshing to hear you, because you preach what we all should be doing. We can hear this 100 times. I'll watch it 100 times. This was a fantastic presentation, Dave. Thank you.
Well, Chuck, thank you very much. And yes, I loved what I learned from Mike. I went to his action workshop and spent 3 days mastering scripts and dialogues, and I really realized the time it takes. Memory is not an easy thing, and memorizing something where you can really say it, like from the heart, but you get the words exactly right, because that's, I say scripts are poetry. They're written like, you want to get them exactly the way that they were put together by Mike or whomever. And so that takes work. That repetition takes work. But once you have it, Chuck, right? Yep. Once you have that script, it just feels so good. It feels so good. And the other thing that Mike's saying is that, in a sense, your presentation is another set of scripts. And that's what I teach in my Why List With Me clinic, my Zoominar, is that these are the fundamental scripts of why list with me, or why you should list with me. And when you master that, now you have a confidence level to go out and ask for business, right? And get a meeting and all of that. There's just something about it, because you can answer that question. Tell me, why should I list with you? Now, I'm sure, Chuck, that you, given the courageous guy you are, you did a really good job of just winging it on the stage with Mike, because you had probably worked on that presentation anyway.
Boy, but I sure did afterwards.
You sure did afterwards. No, I think one of the things that is a great challenge, that's why when I took the Dale Carnegie sales course to graduate, you had to give your whole sales presentation following their formula in front of everybody. And I think that's a good thing for everyone to challenge them to do, is say, I am going to master my listing presentation, and I'm going to go to page 95 of MREA, and I'm going to master those 10 things that I do for buyers or for sellers, and I'm going to be able to present that. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, let me tell you what I do. Basically, I use a 10-step process to help your home sell successfully. Here are the 10 things I do. And then there they are. They're right there on that page. So just start with mastering that.
Yep. Well, you got a new follower. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chuck. Appreciate it.
We got a couple of other questions. Susanna, I see your hand is up.
Yes. Hi, Dave. This was absolutely wonderful and exactly what I needed right now.
Good, Susanna. That's why you're here.
This is my 4th year in real estate. My 3rd year, I don't really count my 3rd year. I spent a lot of time flipping houses. Okay. And so now I've refocused knowing where my bread and butter is. And that is being a realtor. But I really loved your explanation about, and your comments about mental strength and resilience.
Yes.
Lately, I've been personally affected by COVID in my network, both family and friends, significantly. Yes. So I find myself running to the news and television and trying to, figure out who's saying what, fact checking everything, because it's actually affected what I'm doing in my day-to-day responsibilities and how I'm communicating with people. And I'm just trying to figure out in terms of, I really love the fact that you said, let fear be your compass. I found myself certain times during the day, although I'm still continuously working because I'm being driven that way, and I love what I do.
Good for you. Good for you. I'm glad you're keeping at that.
I am sometimes in little moments of the day focusing on this fear. And so I know this business is very cyclical and everything. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, what resources or sources are you focusing on when you do listen to the news or want information that's factual? Like, where are you going to listen so that I'm not, you know, going to the wrong sources and kind of feeding that fear rather than moving away from it? Yeah,
it's a great question. First of all, I think I try and use that stoic point of view, you know, to only focus on that which I can change, right? So I can't change the national politics. I can't change the governor's decisions about lockdowns. I can't change any of that, right? And so it doesn't really benefit me to put much mental energy, certainly no emotional energy, to get upset about it or to do posts about it or whatever, you know, unless I think I want to be a thought leader. And then I think sometimes you can step up and let your opinion be known, because it's like voting or something, right? But I stay away from that, even though I am very politically curious. And for the last 8 years, I've really spent a lot of time studying, you know, politics and governance. And I have a whole series in Dave. I have a thing I've done on davejenks.com called Seeker the book. And I have 30 podcasts in there about the wisdom I've gained in my life about different things. And I include in that politics and governance and economics and business. But my point of it is, so I'm interested in that. But what I realize is day to day, I do not want to feed myself this. And so I would say the two things I pay attention to are local information that matters, like what's going on with COVID locally. And if I come down with it, what clinic would I want to go to? My wife and I have a doctor in a clinic that if we come down with it, we know where we're going, right? Because we believe they have a track record of handling it very well. And so that's, I want to know that. I want to kind of have that. You know, we have some food supply and other emergency things tucked in, including cash in case things blow up, you know, locally. I don't know. I think it's good to be a little bit prepared for those kind of emergencies, but it's, you know, it's hard to prepare for massive emergencies. It just really is. And then I think the other thing is I say, what is it that matters to me now? Where can I make a difference? And that's why I committed early on in March to do as many of these Zoominars across Keller Williams as I could, because I really wanted to help agents build their skill and build their success, and also to be supportive of Keller Williams, because I think it's such a great company, right? So I put my energy there. And I would say to you, the big challenge that you have is to say, who is it that I want to serve? And it's, you know, in some ways, I know I can tell you're very much a caregiver for your family and people around you. And you have to be a little careful about how much that drains you, right? I think you have to be careful. And some people are just takers. And you have to draw that line for yourself where you don't let them take more than you're willing to give, right? You just have to, and those aren't easy lines to draw. And you try and find nice ways to do it without sort of offending them. But just understand the most important asset in your life is you. And it's that I believe this is a day and age where the put your own oxygen mask on first matters a lot. Make sure you're taking care of your energy, yourself, and putting your oxygen mask on. Otherwise, it's hard to serve anybody else.
Thank you.
Is that helpful, Suzanne?
Very much so. Thank you very much.
Good. No. Yeah. I think one of the things you understand in dealing with adversity is that it's adversity. It's not easy. There's a lot of people that get knocked off their pins. There's a wonderful book I got to write the foreword to by Wayne Salmons called The Art of Getting Back Up. And he talks about when he got massively knocked down a couple times in his life and how he learned to get back up and play the game even after he'd been knocked down. And he asked me if I would write the foreword to that book. And I would tell you it's about 6 or 8 pages long. It's probably one of the best things I've ever written. It really is. And if any of you want a copy of that, it's the forward to The Art of Getting Back Up. If you want a copy of that, just say that in your message, and then I'll add that into what I send back.
Cindy asked, at what stage in your career did you feel you mastered the business?
Well, it's interesting. You're always taking your mastery to another level. So I never like to say I have mastered it, but I would tell you it's when I started to teach it. So what's interesting is, I got a chance to become a training director with Century 21 pretty fast. So I didn't pursue a long-term career as a real estate salesperson, right? And it was when I started to really interview a lot of different agents. That's what Gary Keller and I did to write MREA. We just did masterminding with a lot of different agents. And once you get the perspective on the best of practice of people across the industry, then it starts to crystallize into what matters. So I'll just tell you what, the time I probably feel that I had reached a level of mastery in the business was after we wrote MREA. So it took me a long time. It took me a long time. But I think I have a high standard about what mastery means, right? So I think that people can get very good at the fundamentals of this business very fast. I like to say to people, the biggest challenge in real estate is your first 10 transactions. And then the next challenge is doing 20 in 1 year. And then the next challenge is having an assistant or two and doing 50 or 60 in a year. And once you get to 50, you can take it as big as you want. That's when MREA really kicks in. But the hardest part of this business is the front end of it because it's very complicated.
Shivangi asked, what is your favorite failure that propelled you forward?
Yeah, I would say it was the failed suicide attempt. I'm glad I failed. But I had a plan. I mean, Dave is a planful person. Even back then, I was a planful person. So I had the plan. I was going to walk out in the middle of the Adirondack Mountains. I had a couple of bottles of Southern Comfort with me. So I was going to make it easy, go out there, get drunk, lay on a blanket. And, it was going to be probably like 4 degrees or 5 degrees. And, by the next morning, I'd have been gone. So how's that for a plan, huh? I write about that in the forward to The Art of Getting Back Up, because what happened was when I came out of that, I had to face a lot of questions. One was, why did I feel so bad about myself? What was it about me that made me feel so bad that I thought I should take myself out? And it's really interesting. I came to a couple of very fast insights. And then the second question was, so how are you going to prevent this from happening again? And that's where I got in touch with the positive psychology. And it's not hypey, it's very scientific, but in the word of cognitive psychology and positive psychology. And I began to understand the research on how it is that the way we talk to ourselves impacts our emotions and gets us in either a whirlpool down into a dark place or an anxious place, or it can lift us up into a elevated creative place. And the challenge of life is getting that momentum going in a positive way, as opposed to letting it sink you down into a lower way. And I would say that was the biggest lesson I had to learn. And then the final one I would just tell you is I had to learn to be more planful in my work. I really had to, I was trying to wing it on pure energy and vitality, right? Just attack something. And I really realized that the finesse is in figuring out how to do it, what your goals are, what your action plan is, and then staying on track. And I would say that probably the skill that, other than my communication skill and my ability to teach, the thing that propelled me on through to success in real estate executive management was my ability to plan and execute and get other people to do the same. Now there's a long answer to the question, and it may not be relevant to what you're all dealing with. So thank you for giving the old man a chance to talk.
Therese asked, you mentioned asking for the business. What does that look or sound like as it relates to finishing up your listing appointment?
Are we ready to get going? I would say, for example, I would set up, and there's a thing I teach in my listing clinic about setting the stage and the 3 questions you ask at the front end. And then once you get in, say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, there's really 3 reasons. I did it earlier in the presentation. There's really 3 reasons, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that you should list with me. 1 is you can trust me. 2 is I will answer all your questions. And 3 is I will protect you all the way to closing. Does that sound good to you? Great. Are you ready to get started? See, are you ready to get started? Don't think that you have to keep presenting and presenting and presenting. Say, should we get started? Should we get going? Should we get your home sold? Let's go. And then you're right into the contract and the determining the price and setting up staging and deciding when it's going to go on the market. And you want to get there as fast as you can. And it's okay for me, in my experience, to assume, say, are we ready to get started? Well, yeah, I guess so. Okay, good. First thing we have to do is we have to reach this agreement, got to get the paperwork done. Then let's really work on looking at the market conditions and how we can get the best price. And, you know, I've been around your home, so there's some things I think we need to take care of before we put it on the market. Does that make sense to you? Okay, so let's do a little timetable. See how I'm getting into doing the work. And then, you know, let them stop you. I mean, if they say, well, wait a minute, we haven't decided yet. No, by the way, almost no one will do that. Almost no one will do that. So I think you're really getting at the work. Your assumption is they're going to list with you and they're ready to, and you're ready to get the job done right now.
Cool.
Yeah. And I would do that more than saying, okay, do you have any questions? Okay, is there anything else? Is there anything else I need to cover? See, all that feels weak. All that feels like, oh, well, maybe they should have another question. Maybe there's something they didn't ask, you know. And you don't want to do that. You want to be right there and you're ready to go to work. Say, should we get started? Let's get at this. If you have any questions, I'll answer them along the way, but let's just get ourselves going here. Anyway, there's some of that finesse, and you're asking great questions. So there's some of that finesse that's covered in my Zoominar called Why List With Me, where I really focus on the scripts and dialogues that I would recommend you use in a listing presentation and how that gets you to doing the job faster as opposed to making more and more of a presentation. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you.
You bet, Chris. No, thank you. Thank you for
amazing.
being our MC and keeping things going. Thank you, everybody, for all of those of you that have tuned in. Again, feel free, write me, dave@kw.com. Any comments you want to make would be fine, plus your 3 ahas, and I'll send all those materials to you, okay?
Sounds great.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care. Finish the year strong.